Toxic positivity. If ever there were a 2020 mental health term, this one seems fitting. It's actually been around forever. The name is what's trending these days because we're feeling it more than ever. Toxic positivity comes from the idea that the best way to cope with a bad situation is to put a positive spin on things. Avoid the negative, even if there's plenty of negative coming our way. Now, this concept and why it's okay to not be okay is what we're going to be discussing for our September installment of Wellness Wednesdays. This is part of a new series brought to you by the Center for Family Involvement at VCU's Partnership for People with Disabilities. The last Wednesday of each month, we're going to have a raw and real discussion about mental health. I'm Erin Croyle. I'm the communication specialist for the Center for Family Involvement. I host these along with Patrice Beard, our mental health specialist. And today we're joined by Mauretta Copeland, our cultural broker for the African American community. For those who don't know, the Center for Family Involvement works with families to increase their skills as advocates, mentors, and leaders so that families, children, and adults with disabilities can lead the lives that they want. All of us at the CFI has a loved one with a disability, and we share that life experience. And that's what makes us more than capable to talk on about today's topic. So I want to start with Patrice. Patrice, can you tell me how often, as our mental health specialist, toxic positivity comes up in your work?
Oh, all the time. We just kind of call it stigma, right? We hide it all the time. When people ask us how we're doing, fine. People don't want to talk about their struggles with mental health because of stigma. It's easier just to say what you want to hear, right? So I think what we're finding, I've been thinking about this toxic positivity, and I think what we're finding now is now it's just bigger and it's covering more people. People with mental health, pre-existing mental health conditions, we're suffering. We're dealing with all this, but now there are people who, for lack of a better term, weren't living with a mental health condition, but they are now because of COVID and because of the different circumstances. And so I think we're seeing it a lot more now. I just kind of call it stigma because it's kind of the same thing. It's hard out there right now. I know that.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we think about some of the examples because the term toxic positivity doesn't really mean much unless you really think about when it's happened in your life, right? So a good example is, and I do this to myself, look at the silver lining, or when someone tells you everything happens for a reason. Mauretta, what sort of things do you encounter then when this comes up?
When it does come up, I've heard things like, well, pray about it, which y'all already do, whatever the situation is, pray about it, trust God, you know what I mean? And some of that is cultural, things like, I've heard other people even express this, God won't give you any more than you can handle, those types of things. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard more than once that God only gives special children to special people. And it's a really tough thing to swallow, especially when you're in the middle of a class meeting and your son dumps an entire bag of plantain chips on your daughter and they start screaming and crying and running around. I don't know. I think the problem I have with toxic positivity so much, and when people are telling you to just basically get over it, is that it invalidates everything that you're feeling. And I mean, this year is so hard. There are days I'm not I don't know how to dig out of it. How are you two coping with just the relentlessness that's going on right now?
I would say that for me, I'm typically try to be really, really positive. But there are times when, it's okay. You know what I mean? It's okay. We have to give ourselves some grace, and other people need to do the same. You know what I mean? They need to, people need to understand and just meet people where they are, And so when people don't, allow people to, express those emotions and express those frustrations, it's difficult, it's unnecessary. And I just think that we all need to meet people where they are. And life is tough right now. Even myself, sometimes I found myself like, I want to go on vacation. I want to go, I want to go on vacation so bad, but it's just not safe for me or my family. And so, there are times when I'll even feel guilty about it. Like, okay, you're talking about going, you want to go get a facial and you want to go on vacation, and you have people dealing with, people dying from COVID, and so forth. And, so sometimes, you even feel selfish. You feel selfish, you know what I mean? Like, how dare me, be thinking about getting a facial and, going on some vacation when people are dealing with so much, so many more, a lot of, much more serious issues, And so, one of the ways I cope, I just, hey, I'm entitled to feel the way I feel, as long as I don't stay there, you know what I mean? As long as I don't stay there. But at the same time, I do understand there are some people, that's a way for them to cope. You know what I mean? They may be dealing with whatever, and they may say something, oh, it'll be okay, because, you know what I mean? They may have their own issues going on, and it's just a way for them to cope. Hey, I don't want to hear about what you're going through because I'm already dealing with something. You know what I mean? So, it's a give and take, I guess, we have to give and we have to take.
Yeah.
We have to have some grace.
Absolutely. And I also think sometimes we have to give ourselves grace. Sometimes I feel like we give other people more grace than we give ourselves. Like, if we treated ourselves sometimes just as, wholeheartedly as we treat our friends, right? We always put ourselves on the back burner. And I was listening to what you were saying, Mauretta. What I think is important that we all remember is this is not a competition. Like, how we're feeling and what we're going through and what we're struggling with is not a competition with that person. Like, I can't compare my struggle with Erin's struggle. Well, I'm going through this, but at least I don't have to homeschool my kids, right? I'm going through this, but at least I don't, right? And then Erin might be saying to me, well, I'm going through this, but at least my daughter hasn't been in a hospital before for her mental health. You know what I mean? So we have to give ourselves permission to experience, and it's not a competition. So toxic positivity, it's not like, well, at least that's not happening to me. I'm good. I can't complain. Yes, you can. Yes, you can complain. And like you said, you should take that time to complain because it's good for you. You need to do that. You need to say, all right, I'm going to have a crap day today. I'm in a bad mood. I'm going to feel sorry for myself. As long as you don't stay there, like you said, right? As long as you don't stay there too long, I think it's healthy, to give ourselves a break.
It's funny you're saying this. It reminds me of something I just saw the other day. Someone said, marriage is, you start off and it's all snuggles and sweet. And then 10 years into it, it's arguing over who slept worse last night. I got less sleep than you did. No, you didn't. And it's true. But yet I think with our spouse, it's more like we need them to give us that support. But with our friends, we're always trying to think, oh no, I need to put it in perspective. We need to put it in perspective. Well, sometimes lousy is just lousy, and our lousy might be different than somebody else's, but that doesn't mean that it's not awful. And I think that's the difference. And ahead of this, I was reading up about, toxic positivity, because I found the whole concept really interesting. And what was really interesting is that it's not saying that you shouldn't be positive, right? Because I find myself regularly having dinner with my kids. My oldest, I have a 10-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 5-year-old, right? And I find myself kind of, as hard as it is right now, thinking, okay, well, at least they're not in high school because they would be missing out. This is harder on me now. And I find myself looking for the silver linings. And it's not necessarily that that's wrong. That's actually a really good coping mechanism, as long as I also validate my own feelings that this is hard. You can look at the silver lining, but then also recognize that the rest of it's pretty crappy because it's really awful. Like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, and thinking about that, I mean, what's the real positivity that you two are clinging on to these days?
Well, right now I'm focusing on my daughter's wedding. And there was certainly a time in life that I never thought that would happen. And I'm just so happy for her that that is happening. And that she found someone who treats her like a queen. That she is. No. So I'm really happy about that. I'm happy that I have a job because I know there are people out there that are struggling with that. You know, the roof over my head. You know, I do have a lot of things to be positive about. I just that's what I choose. But I'm not saying like I think what is today, Wednesday? I think Monday, I just could not get it together. I just felt, for some reason, I just felt so blah. And I don't know if it was the cool weather or what. And I'm like, God, I was feeling bad. Like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And then I'm like, okay, stop. Just don't do anything today. If you feel like staying in your pajamas and watching TV today, then just do it. Just don't do it tomorrow. Get yourself together for tomorrow, you know, and keeping an eye on that. But I like to keep positive and acknowledge the positive because with my life and my family's life, I know that sometimes that I've been in worse places than I am now. And so sometimes I try to tell myself that. That's how I keep it.
Yeah, and me too, along those same lines, you know, as Patrice was on talking about, you know, being thankful for what I do have. And there's so many people, you know, due to COVID, they're out of work, they've lost their job, you know, not being able to take care of their family. So many people are being evicted and their homes are being foreclosed on. And so I'm like, I thank God I have a job, you know, I'm in school, you know, and there are times I'm always complaining, you know, I'm like too old to be going back to school. I hate it. You know, I'm like, I hate it. I hate this. I hate that I have to get on here and do this, or I have to do this assignment. But then I tell myself, you know what? You should, you know, I'm thankful for that I have the opportunity to do this, you know, so that's one way that I cope. And even being thankful that, you know, I have family, you know what I mean, to kind of be able to vent to talk to. Some people don't have families, you know, some people don't have family. So yeah, so along the same lines, like Patrice, just basically very practical and yeah, just that's just, I would just say just being thankful, you know, just reflecting on, okay, this is where I am, and just acknowledging, hey, you know, you're blessed, you know what I mean? And just realizing too that, you know, life is about change. This is a change for all of us, you know what I mean? You know, speaking of, you know, COVID-19, you know, whenever we go out, we have to wear masks and everything else that has, you know, come with that. You know, it's a change. It's a crappy change. You know, whoever thought that we would be in this particular situation, you know, that we find ourselves in. But, you know, we just have, we deal with it the best way that we can, you know.
You find yourself with this. Sometimes I have nothing to complain about. Everything's okay. But then I hear myself and I see myself and I'm like lashing out and I'm like, you know, nitpicking and I'm letting things bother me and I'm trying to get control over the little things, you know, like I'm trying to control others and try to control stuff and like little things. I can hear myself and in my head I'm going, stop. But I just can't. And sometimes I feel like I'm doing that because I'm feeling out of control or whatever, or like I'm not giving myself permission to bad mood or complain. So I'm kind of lashing out at everybody else and trying to like get control over silly things, you know? I'm trying to be careful with that. I'm noticing more time that goes by, like I can be really, you know, like I'm surprised my kids haven't blocked me on the phone.
So Patrice, don't you think that's probably like a normal response to, there's so many things that are out of our control right now? So we want to control the little things. I think that's only natural, you know?
Yeah, I have to agree. I find myself like incessantly wanting everything in its place. And it's picking a battle I shouldn't be bothering with because I have 3 little kids, but it makes me feel better. And it takes my focus away from other things. And I'm looking at things I can do to make my life better so I'm not treating other people in a certain way, because I could feel it.
Mm-hmm.
You feel it, that angst inside of you. And it's not going away. And in fact, I mean, we're talking about COVID, but Mauretta, as a Black woman, how much harder is this year for you? Not, I mean, I don't mean to say year. I mean, what am I talking about? Your life experience is so different, just based on being a Black woman. And I can't imagine living in a society where you're treated differently because of this.
As a Black woman, and I've been Black all my life, not just start, it didn't just start after George Floyd and, you know, Black Lives Matter, you know what I mean? These are issues that, you know, have been here all along. However, due to COVID, more people are paying attention to a lot of the injustices and discrimination and police brutality and what have you. That has taken place. I guess I would say that it's been a lot. It's been a lot. It's been a lot, but it's like, it's always been there. You know what I mean? I would just say that it's just that more people are aware and are paying attention. And then you have, you know, people out here, you know, the young people are protesting and, you know, Black Lives Matter has a, you know, imprint, their imprint on our society right now. So there are some, you know, changes being made, policies changing, and the whole gamut. So, like I said, it's always been there. It's just more people are aware and paying attention, and yeah, it's always been there. You know, it's always been there. It is a lot, but I would say like we live in an age of social media, and we get you know, all the news like right away, and it's always been there. It's like there's nothing really different other than the fact that more people are aware. People were forced to pay attention due to COVID and the shutdown of the country. Well, most of the country. So yeah, there is the added layer of, you know, the impact of COVID on Black and Brown communities. So, you know, making sure that, so that's another layer, you know what I mean? Issues with health disparities and so forth were already there. And then COVID-19 has just exacerbated that, you know? So yeah, yeah.
Well, it almost feels like there's a hint of toxic positivity when we even talk about COVID. You know, there's a political divide with it, but there are some people who think it's gonna get better. And then with what you said, I mean, I just read yesterday that an alarming number of Latinx individuals have died from COVID. Like the disparity there is palpable. It just makes everything so much harder to think about it, and to hear people say that this is not a big deal right now, because everything's a big deal right now. This year is just exhausting. I mean, when we talk about culture, it is a very American thing to put a positive twist on things. It's a very like, you can do this, you can get things done. And I wonder, you know, I wonder if that's part of what's affecting what's happening now, you know?
Something that's happening too with schools, with people deciding whether to do virtual learning or go into school. And I feel like that toxic positivity is going both ways, because I feel like there are the parents that send their kids to school and decide to send their kids to school, and then there are parents that decide, I'm going to keep them at home for whatever reason. And it's almost like they're attacking one another based on their, it's like, why are we doing that? Like, oh, kids aren't going to catch it. It's not that bad. Like you said, it's not that bad. You're being overprotective. It's all going to be fine. And I just feel like in these places where we should be coming together, like, who cares? Like, who cares if you can virtual learn, that's what you want to do. If you want to go in and that's what you want to do. What I'm saying is these two, like, it's toxic to one another. I don't know if you call that toxic positivity, but it's like, we're just, I don't, it's frustrating to see people just attacking one another and not giving other people permission to feel how they want to feel. If they're feeling scared and they don't want to let their kids go to school, don't come at them and say, you're being ridiculous, this is nothing. You know what I mean? And vice versa. I just feel like with all that's going on, we should just be holding each other up and not kind of so judgy and tearing each other down. Is that just me? I just feel like my kids aren't even in school, but I'm like, yo, mind your business. It's okay.
No, Patrice, that totally makes sense. And part of the reason I actually wanted to talk about this today is because of school, and I'm so tired trying to do it all that I can't even remember to bring that up. So I'm glad you did. I think a big problem and a big part of, toxicity in general is that we are all living in our own little bubble, our own little reality bubble. And like Mauretta said, social media is there and it just perpetuates that. Our friends are all typically in the same bubbles. So we're floating in our bubble of beliefs without any empathy for the people around us, without any empathy for someone who has a different life experience, whether that be a disability, whether that being Black, whether that being Chinese, Latinx, LGBTQ. We just get sucked in this bubble without having empathy. And I think that's part of where it comes from. So, it's this thing where I feel like you need to take yourself out of your situation and put yourself in someone else's shoes. And people aren't doing that. Instead of, like we talk about, getting down in there and getting down in it with somebody to understand why they're feeling a certain way, we just brush it off. Oh, it's no big deal. Someone talks about how hard the school year is. Oh, it'll all be okay. It'll go back to normal soon enough. That doesn't make it any easier for people enduring a very impossible situation that is literally causing anxiety and mental illness right now in so many of my peers.
Even in the mental health community, I was talking to my daughter and she's just having like a couple weeks ago, and she was just having a really down time and she was feeling depressed and she was feeling this and she was feeling that. And I was like, you do know we're in a pandemic, right? You do know over and above what you normally deal with, you're dealing with a whole lot more too. And so is everybody else. So I think we need to cut ourselves a break too. I think sometimes we are how do I say it right without sounding, we do it to ourselves. Toxic positivity we put on ourselves sometimes. Like, why am I feeling this way? Why am I this way? Why am I feeling depressed? Why am I sad? Why am I, why? And what's wrong with me? And I can do this. And you just keep pushing down. I got this. Because at least I have this, or at least that has not happened to me. And you start comparing yourself, and then you keep going and going, and then you want to know why I'm sad, why am I depressed, why am I eating nonstop, why am I this, why am I that? It's because we're toxic to ourselves sometimes, because there's a pandemic. It's like people that aren't even struggling, have never struggled with depression or mental health issues before, are now. So can you imagine what's going on with the people who are diagnosed and have been living with a mental health condition? Or I even had to say that to my daughter. We're in a pandemic. I'm so sad. I'm so bored. And this was like in the height of it, like, because you can't leave your house, like you can't go to the gym, you can't whatever, remember, acknowledge what's out there, what we can't control. So like, I think we're guilty of toxic positivity in the community and amongst ourselves, but also self-inflicted, I think, is a problem too. We just have to acknowledge what it is. I think for the mental health, for everybody, I'm including everybody in this, what we're finding now is low calls, right? Low calls for Helpline and Warm Line. But what we're finding is high calls for suicide, high admission rates for mental health. And this is going to be, in my opinion, we're going to be dealing with this for years to come from this situation. So we really have to do better on, acknowledging. So what does that say? Why are people not reaching out for help? Even with our CFI line, I feel like calls have gone down. But people are struggling. What is stopping people? What is it? Is it toxic positivity? They don't feel like they should be complaining right now because everybody's going through this? What is it that's stopping people from reaching out for help, but yet suicide rates and admission rates are up? Well, I think we have to be very careful with that and allowing ourselves to acknowledge the suck and reach out for help.
When I remember when my son was born, my oldest, and it was a surprise that he had Down syndrome. And, that diagnosis for any parent is kind of earth-shattering, right? And it's a child, though. It's your first child, and you just became a parent. You're supposed to be happy. You're not supposed to be sad. You're not supposed to mourn your child. And I remember distinctly we were living in Malaysia, so thankfully we didn't have anyone there because I didn't want to see anybody. I just wanted to deal with it in my own way. And I sent an email to all of our family and friends saying what was going on and saying, listen, I know it's all going to be okay eventually, but right now I just need to feel what I need to feel. And I said, please do not email me trying to make it all rainbows and sunshine. Please don't do that to me now. And I think that that's important for us to do always, right? Like to feel what we're feeling. But it does also help to talk about it. So I do wonder why people aren't talking about it. Maybe they're talking with each other, but we also are seeing domestic abuse rates going up. All sorts of issues, I believe I saw crime rates are going up in New York City for the first time in I don't know how many years.
It is rather odd, especially with kids going back to school. I would think that parents would be reaching out more regarding IEP stuff, virtual IEPs, and looking for more guidance regarding that. And but not so much. Not so much. So it is rather strange.
Right. Well, I've really not received anybody that's reached out to me for mental health resources or anything like that. And that's a concern. And there are several committees that I'm on that we're looking at long-term and funding long-term way out because, I think we're going to see a lot of this coming in the next couple years. This is going to have some long-term. That's why discussions like this, I feel, are so important. And just, it's okay just to get out there and talk about stuff, and if you're hurting and if you're struggling and if you're sad and you're over and above sad, you know what I mean? Like you've been sad for, over a month or two and you can't get out of the bed or you're, things like that. We've got to, apparently what I'm seeing statistically is people are just kind of silently suffering. And is that because of toxic positivity? Is that because we're comparing ourselves with others and not allowing ourselves to feel, like Erin says, the suck? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. If I had to guess, I would say statistically people of color are going to be at a higher rate for that. For these, I want to track that, somehow track that with admissions or suicide rates or like calls and things like that, because like Mauretta said, over and above COVID, there's things going on, as well.
And I will, in the YouTube description for anyone with, and wherever this is posted, I will have that information that you can read and find, so you can reach out to any of us at the Center for Family Involvement, because we do have one-on-one support for someone to talk to, emotional, informational. We can connect you with others if you need to talk to someone. If you need to talk to a professional, we can give you phone numbers of whomever.
Telehealth is a great thing. I mean, one thing that's come out of COVID is that you don't need to go into somebody's office and receive services. Telehealth is a great thing. I mean, and there was a program that my daughter was waiting to get in for 6 months. And when COVID hit, because everything was virtual, she got into the program because I guess the time that you drive in and meet and, all that stuff is cut down so they could see more people. So, I mean, there is definitely a way for telehealth for people to reach out and speak to people and get help and things like that.
And I've read an article written by one therapist who said that although she was skeptical of telehealth back before we've always needed it, but when you're talking about mental health, she said it's actually, she's been able to touch some of her patients in a way and connect with them in a way that she wouldn't have in an office visit. Also,
it kind of helps address, unfortunately, the stigma issue that we still live with mental health. People not wanting to be seen. I know that there are certain category of like job descriptions or whatever that they don't want to be judged or seen at a therapist's office, and that telehealth kind of takes all that away. So there's really no reason, if you have access to a computer or something, that you can be seen without worrying about being judged or stigmatized for reaching out for help.
And you mentioned calls being down, people having access to telehealth. You know what I mean? That's a great resource right now. I think about the people who may not have access to like technology, not able to use Zoom or WebEx or what have you, you know what I mean, to contact their healthcare, to be in touch with their healthcare providers or mental health clinician or what have you. So it's all very interesting. And you mentioned people possibly silently suffering. That's kind of scary. People who are already fairly isolated are probably isolated much more due to COVID.
Before we kind of wrap this up, I would like to talk about like toxic positivity that has kind of impacted you, that is kind of sat with you and kind of impacted you in a way that maybe you didn't realize until we started talking about it. Like, I can think of two things for me personally. One thing my mom used to always say to me as a kid is, don't get your hopes up, which isn't really toxic positivity. It was just kind of negative now that I think about it. But, you shouldn't always get your hopes up about things, but I don't know, maybe she was realist. But one thing that really still sticks out to me and has kind of made parenting difficult for me in some ways is that whole, when you say you're tired or, you're venting to an aunt or a grandparent, like you just want to go to bed and you wish bedtime was easier, your kids are driving you crazy, and they come back to you with, oh, but they're going to grow up one day and you're going to miss it. I have had everyone say that to me, even someone at the grocery store. And mind you, I'm a mother that will drop everything to do bedtime with my kids. I work from home. I am with them all the time. And to say that to me adds this layer of guilt onto me, once a year, I maybe go away during bedtime. The one time a year where I go on a work trip and I feel like I shouldn't. And it is truly toxic. And people say this thinking it's no big deal and it's an important lesson for us to learn. But in fact, I think for a lot of mothers, that's a really terrible thing to say to them, because we all know this. We feel it every day. And I don't know, I just kind of wish I could put that out of my mind because it's always stuck there. What about you two?
I would have to say that in the past, I have been probably guilty of some of this. Some like my kids, I have 2 young adults. And so they grew up really quickly. It's like it went by so fast. And, I found myself, people saying this and that about their kids. And I'm like, oh, but they grow up so fast. You need to enjoy this time, that kind of thing. So it's hard, you know what I mean? And I guess we just have to, so now I'm definitely I am more mindful, you know what I mean? I am much more mindful. But, when my kids were coming up, people have, expressed that same sentiment with me, you know what I mean? And it didn't bother me so much. I think what bothered me more so was with my daughter, disability, you know what I mean? And people would say, make little comments or whatever, but, so yeah, having this conversation definitely has me, will definitely make me more mindful of making statements like that. Kids grow up really, really quickly, or like my daughter is a person, my daughter types spells to communicate, and people were like, oh gosh, my child just talks so much. That's all they do is talk, 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 talk. And I'm like, really? Like, I would welcome that, you know what I mean? When my child was younger, for a long time, for a while, my daughter didn't have an effective way to communicate. And so I guess like we were saying earlier, we just have to allow each other to feel how they feel, and give each other grace. You know what I mean? We have to be more forgiving, and So it works. I guess with me, it works both ways. There are times I've been the person on that have made the comments, to parents, and I've been on the receiving end as well. So we just have to be mindful and respect each other, and just meet each other where we are.
Yeah, I try to preface things if I'm getting ready to share a story, whether it be about my daughter or my brother or something like that, depending on the situation. I try to, and I'm sharing my story around other people. I always try to preface it with, this is my story. We all have our own stories. We're all individual in this. Do not compare your story to my story. We all have a right to feel how we feel with our own story, right? Because I don't want to share my story with my daughter, about my brother or something like that. And then people will shut up because like, whoa, I never had that. So at least I never had, I can't complain. You know what I mean? Like, yes, you can, because this is my individual story. So that's how I try to give permission for other people not to compare to me. I think just giving myself maybe more permission to feel bad when I need to feel bad. And make it not a comparison. Because like I know sometimes, like with my husband, like Erin was saying earlier, you argue about who sleeps worse or something like that. And like if I say something like, oh, my back hurts, or whatever, because that's another thing. Chronic pain's worse for some reason. I'm talking to different doctors, and right now with COVID and everything, and being inside and everything, people's pains, people who deal with chronic pain, it's elevated. I mean, there's a lot going on. I mean, obviously that's another topic, but I'll say something to him like, my knee hurts or something like that. And he'll be like, oh, well, my knee, da, 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 da. And I'm like, and I'll just stop and I'll look at him. I'm like, I didn't say it to compare with you to who's got it worse. I just said it. Can you just say, okay? And, so, you know what I mean? It's always a comparison. So yeah, I think I need to challenge myself for that too. When I hear other people, I need to meet them where they are and understand where they are. And even if in my head, I need to stop thinking, I wish that's all I had to deal with, or something like that. I just need to accept and say, well, acknowledge it and empathize with it.
I know recently, with everything going on with COVID and, things that we would typically be able to do or not able to do, right now. I remember, this is very recent, my daughter was just driving me nuts. I mean, really, she was bringing it morning, noon, and night. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like, you girl, I like you so much better I told her, I'm like, I like you so much better when you were younger. And one of my family members heard it and they were like, no, you did not say that to her. They were like, did you really say that to her? And I'm like, yeah, I did. And I meant it. And you would have thought they got really quiet at that point. And I'm like, if you knew what I was dealing with. And my daughter was fine with it because she knew she was bringing it. She's, at one point she was like, I'm sorry, Mom, I'm just having a tough time. She's like, I need a vacation, And so talk about toxic positivity.
Years ago, I was with my daughter, it was so much, there's periods where some was worse for time, there's times that are worse than others. And I said in front of somebody else, I said, you were literally, this is so bad. I was like, you were literally sucking the life out of me. And somebody was like, oh, I can't believe you said, I'm like, come on, we've all been there. I just said it out loud. Or maybe it's just me.
No, no, because I'm in it now. I have 3 of them doing that. And I love them dearly. But yeah, it's relentless. We're allowed to say that. I think normalizing it just helps us feel better. And that's the irony, isn't it? That positivity makes you feel worse. But if someone who you respect, who has a similar experience, can tell you, oh my gosh, this sucks so bad, I feel better. Distance learning sucks. COVID sucks. Hey, this really stinks. I really need a vacation. This sucks. That makes me feel better. But someone saying it's going to be all okay, that doesn't help.
Well, okay, but that doesn't stop me feeling how I'm feeling. Like people will say to me, I try to do better. People will say to me, well, how are you? And how many of us go, fine, good. And that's toxic positivity, right? I mean, we're good, we're fine, it's all good. Yeah. And you may just have been crying, you know what I mean? And so what I try to do now is I've been trying to do is if somebody says, how are you? I'll be like, honestly, like, do you really want to know, or do you want me to say fine? I can say fine, but, or I'll say, I'm here. I'm, or I'm struggling, and that person, I don't need to have a conversation with that person, but at least that's, I don't know. Is that a bad thing to say? Being honest?
You know what I do? Because you can't really, even asking someone how you're doing, I feel is a loaded question now. So when someone asks me how you doing, I sarcastically with a big smile, I'll just say, living the dream.
Toxic positivity.
If it's sarcasm and they know it, it's like, yeah, right? Because it's a dystopian nightmare right now, let's be honest.
And the comment that I made just a few moments ago, there was a time I probably would not have said that. I would not have allowed myself to feel what I was feeling and share that. But hey, it is what it is. And we have to give, like we were saying earlier, give ourselves some grace and be honest with ourselves and feel what we're feeling at that moment. I was sleep deprived and, my daughter was just, I don't even want to talk about it. It was like 2 weeks of pure for 2 weeks, and she knew she was bringing it to my husband and I, and yeah, but there was a time I never would have shared that, you know, I never would have said that, and I meant every word of it. Love her to pieces. Love, 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 love her. Love her to pieces. That is my girl, but ooh, she bought it those 2 weeks. Ooh, ooh.
So I think we're going to wrap it up. This has been great. I can already think of like a couple other topics. Mauretta, when you talked about your daughter and, you know, the speaking thing, that really came to me because I think we could talk about PTSD for parents who have kids with disabilities, because those moments, I have so many of those moments where you just, things that people say just sting so deeply, and it's totally innocuous. And I think that we could do a whole topic on why people aren't reaching out right now. That could be a whole segment of how to help someone who's not able to reach out, because I know I have someone in my life who could really use some help right now. So thank you. Thank you for another Wellness Wednesday.
Thank you for joining us, Mauretta.
Thank you for having me.